Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about how far can you change the Dungeons and Dragons rules before you're no longer playing Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now first of all, why am I answering this question today? So first of all, this is an interruption of my normally programmed content, right? So one, I do have a pretty specific method that I use to determine my content, right? And I keep a list of ideas. That list currently has 500 ideas on it. Wow. And it is, not every idea I get for a video am I even do I even have time to do, which is astonishing because I challenge you. I create more Dungeons and Dragons commentary than anyone on the planet, bar none. I, I'm claiming the crown. If you think I'm wrong, point me to anybody. Anybody. I do more, period. Okay? I also think I have a wider breadth of coverage than anybody else on the planet. So not only, and the breadth of my commentary comes from the volume of my commentary. Okay, all right. So the reason why I'm interrupting my regularly programmed method of determining what video I do content on and I make commentary on for Dungeons and Dragons is because I'm going to say my favorite commenter. Yeah, this guy's my favorite commenter. He asked this exact question. He said, "How far do you have to change Dungeons and Dragons before you're no longer playing Dungeons and Dragons?" So I'm going to answer that question today. All right. First of all, favorite commenter, thank you so much for this question. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your many years of watching and commenting and encouraging. That is incredibly valuable to me. I really appreciate it. I cannot thank you enough. All right. So here's the answer. Okay. So first of all, if you don't have the DMG, the PHB, and the MM at your table, you're not playing D&D, in my humble opinion. Now, you're like, wait a second, Scott, what about the starter box? Okay, first of all, if you're using the starter box, you're casual, and you are excused. No problem, right? You're still in your formative, it's like a baby, like, with a pacifier, right? Like, none of what I'm going to talk about is, when you're still, and honestly, if you're using the starter box, you're really deciding if you're going to play Dungeons and Dragons. That's really where you're at, right? Which is fine, right? So nothing I'm going to say. So if you're still formative, right, like, and still forming your crew, the people you play Dungeons and Dragons with, you're fine. Don't None of this applies to you, okay? All right, but if you got 10, 20 sessions under your belt and you've weaned yourself off of the starter box, here's the answer, okay? All right, if you don't have the DMG, the PHB, and the monster manual at your table, you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons, period. Okay, you have to have those at the table. Now, it's possible that the dungeon master doesn't have any of those books. Okay, and it's possible that those books are split across 3 different players or 2 different players. Okay, or it's possible that the dungeon master has all 3 and no one else at the table has a single book. Okay, fine. All right. But if those 3 books are not at the table, you are not playing Dungeons and Dragons. Period. End of sentence. Be gone. Okay. All right. Shuffle off to your OSR, your indie corner. Right. All right. Okay. Why are they there? You can't just sit the books down and you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Each book has to be the authoritative source for one, just one element of your game, of your campaign. One element of your campaign. Just one element of your campaign. So you could go all the way down to you're only using the hit points. Or you could go all the way down to only the monster types, right? This is an ooze. This is an undead, right? And this weapon, gets resistant. And this weapon, you roll a plus D4 when you go against this monster type. That could be the only thing you're using from the monster manual. Is like just saying, oh, it's a skeleton. Then you look in there and its type is undead. All right. If it just one element but one element from each book. Okay. Now the other thing is the Dungeon Master Guide is 1. Okay. If you do not have a Dungeon Master, right, one Dungeon Master at a time, you can absolutely switch. right? But if you have 2 dungeon masters, you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. And that comes from the DMG, okay? From the DMG. Yeah, this is going to get really weird. Listen to this. I have a very unique opinion on of course. So if you play rules as written, I think you are ignoring your DMG and you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. If you have not changed anything in Dungeons and Dragons, you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. You did not read page 4 that said the rules aren't in charge, you are, right? And I think if you are literally playing every single aspect of the PHB, the DMG, and the Monster Manual, rules written with no changes, you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. You have not heard the voice of Gary Gygax. You have not heard the voice of Lorraine Williams. You are not playing Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, let's get back to what. So one, you have to have a dungeon master. If you're playing some nonsense game where you don't have a dungeon master, or more than one person is a dungeon master at a time, you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so you have to have a dungeon master, and that's the one thing you're taking from the Dungeon Master Guide is you acknowledge the title of Dungeon Master and you have a dungeon master. You don't have to use anything else, right? But you're using that, right? And then the PHB, okay? You have to be using at least one species from the PHB and one class from the PHB, okay? And you don't even have to use you don't even have to use any of the rules, right? Human fighter, done. PHB is good. Why did you need the PHB? Because it says fighter, right, rather than warrior. If you're running a human warrior, which does not exist in D&D, you're not playing D&D. So that's the answer. Do you have the books at the table, and are you using each one of those books to authoritatively gold answer one question, right? And you are using the book as it is written for one single element for each book, then you're still playing D&D. The second you are at a table and you do not have the DMG, you do not have the PHB, and you do not have the Monster Manual, you are no longer playing D&D. Now, I will say this. If you are unwealthed, you are excused, and you're still playing D&D. If you do not have the money or the access to those books, you are 100% playing D&D. But if you have the money, all right, and you are choosing to not use one of those books, you're no longer playing D&D, right? Which is your right. You can do that, but you shouldn't be telling anybody you're playing D&D. That's an honored title, right? That means you're doing something of significance. If you want to do something of non-significance, then play an OSR or play an indie game, right? Like, there you go, right? But if you want to open yourself up to transformative play and the ability to improve yourself through a Dungeons & Dragons experience, then you need to play Dungeons & Dragons, and that's what it takes. Once again, commenter, I could not thank you enough for this question. In your comments, you share that things are going really well. I'm really, really just wonderfully glad to hear that. And I just want to let you know I'm praying for you each day. And, I really appreciate you and all your encouragement over the years. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments, just like my favorite commenter, and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.